Hello and welcome to another video of mine. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at two of the most highly anticipated horror games of recent times. I'm talking about the Dead Space Remake and the Callisto Protocol. Both have piqued the interest of gamers around the world, from their intense gameplay and stunning graphics to their unique characters and immersive sound design. Both games offer something new and exciting for players. So in this video, we will be taking a comprehensive look at both games, comparing their gameplay, their graphics, their characters and sound design. We will also be comparing the main characters, Isaac Clarke from Dead Space and Jacob Lee from the Callisto Protocol, as well as a look at their respective supporting characters like Danny Nakamura. So let's dive in and take a closer look at the Dead Space Remake and the Callisto Protocol and see how they measure up against each other. As all my videos go, let's first start with the information about both these games. Now, Dead Space, the remake that is a 2023 survival horror video game developed by Motive Studio and published by Electronic Arts. It's a remake of the 2008 game of the same name, developed by EA Redwood Shows, and it was released on January 27th, 2023 for PlayStation 5, Windows, and Xbox Series X and S. It's the first release in the Dead Space series since 2013's Dead Space 3. The game received generally favorable reviews from critics, with general praise for its improvements to the original. Now, the Callisto Protocol is a 2022 survival horror action video game developed by Striking Distance Studios and published by Krafton. It is directed by Dead Space series co-creator Glenn Schofield and therefore The Connection, and is considered to be somewhat of a spiritual successor to the series. The game story follows Jacob Lee, who is sent to a prison facility set on the Jovian moon Callisto, fighting against infected prisoners with an unknown disease while uncovering dark secrets of the facility. Gameplay has players exploring a series of levels, garnering resources while fighting off infected prisoners. The game was released for PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Windows, Xbox One, and Xbox Series XS on December 2, 2022, so it's not been out for a long time now. Well, it received mixed reviews. So in comparison to the Dead Space Remake, it being a classic, that is, the Dead Space Remake, the Dead Space Remake obviously had, you could say, better reviews in this game, because the Callisto Protocol, it didn't exactly meet the needs of critics or users alike. So the game kind of failed to meet the sales expectations of Krafton. So let's move on to some of the other important aspects of both these games now. I believe the first biggest difference that I could personally notice was the levels or the world design of both these games. Now, one has to take into account that Dead Space, all of Dead Space in fact, takes place on both the USG Ishimura. So the level design is comparatively more linear to the Callisto Protocol. Now, you do get opportunities to go outside in space, but they are far lesser compared to the Callisto Protocol. Now, the Callisto Protocol, on the other hand, it does not have this linear approach of Dead Space, but it wanted to kind of mix and match. Most of everything that happens on the Callisto Protocol happens on this UJC operated black iron prison on Callisto. It's one of the moons. And therefore, in terms of the world design, I think personally to me, the Callisto Protocol looked comparatively like this bigger world while we are comparing it to the world of Dead Space, that is. Now, both the interior designs of the Dead Space game and the Callisto Protocol, in many places you will find inspiration you see in the Callisto Protocol from Dead Space, and there are a lot of similarities. But when you finally get to go outside in the Callisto Protocol, you see those differences and they kind of stand out. So in terms of the overall world design, if I had to choose one game today, I personally would kind of pick the Callisto Protocol simply because of the way it looks. There's more visual variety that it offers in comparison to the Dead Space. Now, don't get me wrong, the Dead Space is not bad. In fact, it's great because the intricate design of the interiors of the USG Ishimura, they are praiseworthy, definitely. But I think in terms of what you see on screen, I'm talking about variety. Then in that case, the Callisto Protocol, personally to me, comes out on top. Let's talk about gameplay now, and this is probably one of those areas which had the critics praising Dead Space. And this, in my personal opinion, is where the Callisto Protocol kind of lacks or stays behind in this run. Let me explain why. Now, Dead Space, it has a lot of guns. It has a lot of variety in terms of the weapons. So, even in terms of the ammo, for instance, you have to acquire a lot more ammo to play around in Dead Space. Now, the weapons are way more cooler. They're way more inventive than the Callisto Protocol. For instance, the plasma cutter. And then there's also the force gun. So, there's a lot more that you have to do with your guns and ranged attacks in Dead Space. And that's where the difference is. In the Callisto Protocol, because it knows that it lacks in that variety or in that weapons department, it has to kind of make up in melee kills. So that's where the Callisto Protocol is very different, because there is more emphasis on melee attacks. For instance, when you start the game off, you get this stun baton, and that is your weapon of choice for Jacob. In fact, throughout the campaign. So you see where this is going, right? I mean, you do have an option of dodging in the Callisto Protocol, but the emphasis is more on melee combat, and therefore I believe this will have users or gamers divided. People who like melee combat will appreciate the Callisto Protocol, and people who like ranged combat will appreciate the Dead Space. To me personally, I think the Dead Space wins in this department. It just offers way more, and because of the variety, because of the options that you have, and the weapons even, they're way cooler. One of the biggest and most frustrating differences between these two games is that the Callisto Protocol has almost no boss fights. Dead Space has the upper hand in terms of boss fights. The Callisto Protocol, for instance, it has only these two enemies that appear as bosses, and they are both used, or rather reused, so many times throughout the game. Also, there's this lack of challenge when you're coming across all these different enemy types. And speaking of the enemy types, by the way, I do want to give a huge shout out to the necromorphs, because they still, even in 2023, look as iconic as they were back in 2008. Comparatively, they are more interesting to look at than the very bland looking zombies that you would find in the Callisto Protocol. Now, the Callisto Protocol mutant zombies, they look like the same kind of enemies that you have seen in so many of these zombie games over and over again. So it's not gonna kind of attract you towards the enemy type if you really compare these two games. And that's really surprising, because the Dead Space Remake, after all, is a remake of a 2008 game. And for it to hold its ground even in 2023, that's phenomenal. No wonder the critics still praise this game because of the original enemy design. The necromorphs, they really look fierce. And the moment you see them on screen, man, you're going to have chills still in 2023. And therefore, in terms of the enemy types, in terms of the boss fights, Dead Space easily triumphs over the Callisto Protocol and comes out on top. Lastly, I do want to talk about the supporting characters as well. Danny Nakamura, to me personally, was comparatively a way better supporting cast than Daniels or Hammond. It was an immersive experience to me. And the voice acting, the facial animations especially, was absolutely fantastic in the Callisto Protocol. So from the visual standpoint, I think the Callisto Protocol to me personally looked like a much better game. And if I have to choose one winner in terms of the visual department or the looks, it would purely be the Callisto Protocol, based on the voice acting, based on the cast of characters, based on the facial animations, the motion capture, etc. It has more polish there. However, in conclusion, I would say that both Dead Space and the Callisto Protocol offer unique and thrilling experiences for horror fans, from their intense gameplay to their stunning graphics, to their unique characters, the supporting cast, the immersive sound design. Well, I would say both games offer something new and exciting for players. But when it comes to gameplay alone, Dead Space is the winner, and it offers a more intense survival horror experience. There's more variety with the weapons there, there's better ranged combat there, better boss battles there, and the Callisto Protocol, it offers, you could say, a more slower paced, a more atmospheric, a more immersive, a more cinematic experience. And when it comes to graphics, the Callisto Protocol takes the cake. Having said that, the Dead Space also looks great, and please note this is a remake of a 2008 game, and given that, it's done a fantastic job. So I would say ultimately both games offer unique and thrilling experiences for horror fans, and it's up to the gamers, it's up to us players to decide which game is the better experience. Therefore, let me know in the comments section as to which one would you pick amongst these two games, and which one is your favorite and why. Also, if you kind of disagree with me on any of these points, it's always great to have a healthy chat through the comments section, so do drop in a comment and let me know your thoughts. Apart from that, if you haven't already hit that like and subscribe button, I would just really appreciate it if you could hit that like and subscribe, because it helps with the YouTube algorithm, and sharing this video would also help with the YouTube algorithm. So please like, subscribe, and also share it with your friends and family members who enjoy gaming. With that said, it's a wrap for this one, and I'll see you lovely folks in my next video. Until that time, I'll say take care, stay safe, and may God bless you all.